What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a College World Series preview edition, if you will, of the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, alongside the managing editor of Warchant.com. He is Ira Schoffel. My name is Tom Lang. And again, you're here on Warchant TV. Hit the like button as you enter tonight's program. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't, because it's going to be a packed week. Ira, okay, still playing baseball on June the 10th. How are you this evening?
I'm good. Not too bad at all. And looking forward to going out to Omaha, man. I haven't gone the last couple of times. I haven't gone since 2012,
Wow.
which was a decent trip. They won a couple of games out there, got close, gave it a run. But looking forward to getting back out there. And obviously, man, the way this team played the last 2 weekends, definitely excited to see what they can do out there.
Who knew that it was going to be an ACC-SEC battle? I mean, I suppose you could have projected that most of the spots would have gone to those two conferences, Ira, but I know that you wrote an article up today on Warchant.com pending what happens. I think that game's tonight, right? It didn't already happen.
Should be starting right now, yeah.
Yeah, NC State and Georgia in Game 3. It could be 4-4 in terms of conference seats, or 5-3 favoring the SEC. I don't know that any Florida State fans want to wave the ACC banner loud and proud, but Ira, there's no doubt that the conference slate has prepared Florida State to get to as far as they have. It's been a really gifted league this year, and it's played out that way in the postseason. And now Florida State is a part of that conversation between the two conferences. They're one of 8 teams remaining, and sometimes when you say that, it kicks in just how overnight this whole process has been.
Yeah, and I think they just got ranked by D1 Baseball last week, I think. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Starting to get some cred from our friends at D1 Baseball. That whole thing seems comical now when you go back to how long it took for Florida State to get some respect. But, in fairness to them, I don't know that anybody saw this coming, really. I mean, you figured they'd be improved. Link Jarrett obviously is a really good coach. I like some of the moves he made in the offseason, but had no idea some of these other moves would pay off the way they have. And then when you have Cam Leiter's injury and Whitaker missing time, you started thinking, okay, maybe this just isn't going to work out this year. And then here we are. And just, it's funny, like we make a big deal about how this team can look unlikable at times, and they can after some of the home runs and some of the strikeouts by Jamie Arnold, but they're also a really fun team to watch. Like, I could see people really getting excited to watch this team play because they play an exciting brand of baseball. So it's an interesting balance, I guess.
If they're your guys, it's bravado. If they're not, it's a different word. But then again, you look around the entirety of the games that were played this weekend, every regional.
It's college baseball.
Yeah. It is college baseball. I'm not a huge fan of it when it goes above and beyond. I think if you get a free pass, there's nobody on, so you're the first base runner on. I don't know that a walk is a reason to just go absolutely berserk. But hey, I'm 37 and I'm aging out of the demo rapidly, Iris. But the product has been excellent this year in college baseball in general. I think you guys talked about it today, you and Jeff on the Jeff Cameron show, about how they're walking a fine line, but it seems like it resembles baseball, but it also allows for superstars to shine. And Florida State has quite a few, Ira, and one of them showed up this weekend in the form of James Tibbs. He reached base at a 400 clip in the regional. He just didn't have any hits because they were pitching around him. He earned 6 walks and 15 plate appearances. But this was a nice way to remind people that I am the ACC Player of the Year. I am a first-round draft pick in the MLB draft in all likelihood. What a weekend and what a Saturday for James Tibbs.
It also felt like he was like, and this is my field, dude. Because my guy from, was it whatever his name was, Broad Street, I think.
Broadhurst, yeah.
Broadhurst, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I kept going, I was like, I had to look his name up every time I typed it. Broadhurst, Broadway, Broad Street. But anyway, he, at one point, that dude was 4 for 4 with 6 RBIs.
Yep.
And, it was like, okay, this kid's, obviously, he's 25 years old. So he's got that going for him. But, man, he played well at third base. I mean, that kid, for a while, was the most dominant player on the field until James Tibbs was like, no, dude, this is my field. This is my team. This is my super regional. And it was just incredible. And then for Whitaker to come in and shut the door, and the way, we can debate whether or not Whitaker should have come in earlier. But when you did bring him in a tie game, Link Jarrett basically said, we're ending this today. Like, I'm not gonna wait and see what happens on Sunday. I think with Whitaker pitching, whether we have to be here for 5-7 more innings, I feel like we're going to end up winning this game. And he rolled the dice and it came through. I can't even imagine what it would have looked like on Sunday. But good thing is we don't have to find out.
Both teams would have hit the double digits, I do imagine, in terms of runs on Sunday, and it would have been the last team standing. That would be a good time to have last licks that particular day. It did not happen. Alternate universe that we don't live in, and obviously the dog pile was on here at Hauser. You've seen many of those over the years, Ira. I wonder, just in covering a lot of Mike Martin teams, a couple down the stretch that made it to Omaha in Cinderella fashion. Of course, there was nothing like the run in 2019, but they had a couple of unlikely candidates towards the end of his tenure there. Combined with some of the favorites that you covered, teams that had a little bit more bravado and swagger and expectations in the mid 2000s, especially. What's the personality of Link Jarrett's first Omaha participant like compared to some of the other teams that you've seen represent Florida State out there at the College World Series?
I mean, this is unlike anything since I've been covering FSU full time, over 20 years. Now, the teams in the 90s, like, I felt like they had that bravado. They just probably didn't display it the same way. But like you felt,
yeah,
Jonathan Johnson's presence. You felt Doug Minkiewicz's presence. You felt J.D. Drew's presence. So some of the theatrics may be a little bit different, but this team has that kind of confidence. I mean, those guys were so confident, those teams back then. They knew they were the best team in the country. They knew they were going to win the national title. It didn't happen. It's been well documented, but certainly had the talent and the confidence to do it. And then, this team, we'll see if they have the overall talent to do it. I mean, I think that they're going to need to stay in the winners bracket. I know you guys have talked about it. Corey and Aslan have talked about it on Wake Up. They're going to need some things to go right. Like in the regional, they go 3-0 in the regional. And afterwards, I think last week when we were doing the Smash, I think a few people asked, do you feel like the bullpen proved itself or whatever? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, you knew, I mean, they didn't have to use a lot of guys in the bullpen in that game, in that regional. And this weekend, they did have to use a couple more guys, and it got a little dicey. So I don't know, how confident you feel about the bullpen if you get into a situation where you got to come out of a loser's bracket. But if you win those first couple of games, man, this team 100% can play with anybody.
You could be up 10-2 and your starter's out of the game in the 6th inning. Florida State's up 10-2 and the bullpen start. This game's not over. Like, no matter what happened in the regional, personally, there's no flipping of the channel. But on the other side, if you get into all these other teams' bullpens, you're seeing a lot of runs scored in regional play, super regional play. 8 runs, 10 runs, 12 runs or more in so many of these super regional games. This seems like a high-scoring / unpredictable College World Series that you're about to cover, and we'll get to that in just a second. But you're talking about presence. You feel a presence. When Russ Voorhis is in the room as a Nole, you feel Russ's presence. He's a larger-than-life figure. He's at least 6'3", 6'4", but his size and stature as a human being is only outdone by his size and stature as a Nole. He cares very much about Florida State athletics, and he puts his money where his spirit is. To support the programs. He supports Warchant.com and Warchant.com endeavors for a long, long time. He's one of the OGs here, Ira, and he also services in the insurance game, 3 states in the Southeast. He's an outstanding fountain of knowledge to contact if you want to learn more about insurance and finding maybe a better, more reasonable rate for yourself.
He's got to be in a gret mood because I know he's a big FSU baseball fan, and he's obviously excited about what they did this past weekend. And I've been meaning to reach out to Russ and see how he's doing, see maybe he's going to go out to Omaha, and we certainly appreciate him, and we hope people will do him in kind, and at least find out information. Reach out to the website russforhis.com, call the phone numbers, go into the office, and they'll certainly help you out.
Brick and mortar operations on the east side of the state, Jacksonville Beach and Orange Park. For those of you listening on the podcast of the Smash, the spelling of his website, RUSSBORHIS.com, russforhis.com. Support those who support Warchant.com and the Warchant Multimedia Network. Ira, you're on a plane on Thursday, as I understand it, heading up to Omaha. Where do you fly into? Is it Omaha proper, or is it a neighboring airport that's a little ways away?
Yeah, some people do different things. I know through the years, obviously Tallahassee to Omaha is not the best 2 airports to get in and out of. I know some people have gone to Nebraska or, gone to Lincoln. Some people have, gone to other cities and driven in. Some people have driven over to Pensacola or Destin and flown from there, or Panama City. I'm actually going Tallahassee to Omaha through Dallas. Nice. And, it worked out where it's not too crazy. But yeah, man, it should be a fun trip. I've made the drive before. I know
Ooh.
Corey's made the drive before. I do not recommend it, so I'll be flying this time.
What kind of tournament do you think you're covering? As Briley puts it, he asked a question on the back end of it here in the chat tonight. But it's two separate 4-team double elimination brackets. It's almost as though it's two regionals that are running
Right.
concurrently. One regional on one day, another regional on the next, and they alternate days until they come to a resolution for the final series. But, there are years, Ira, where if you draw the number 1 overall seed when you get out to Omaha, thanks for playing. You're going to be in the losers bracket, and you need a whole lot to go your way. To me, from the outside, it just seems a little bit more open. And that's notwithstanding of Evansville's rally against Tennessee to push Tennessee to 3 games. It just, this year seems to be like it's a little bit more open for business. What do you expect as you head out that way a little bit later this week?
I agree. I mean, I think it's wide open. I mean, if you look at even these super regionals that were 2-0, a lot of them were super competitive. And then a few of them have gone to 3 games. And yeah, man, I think the sport is wide open. I just think between the portal and between just the quality of college baseball and the fact that the ball is alive, I just think it gives teams a puncher's chance. Again, late in that game, the kid that comes in to hit the home run against Florida State to put them up. I mean, that's kind of, they take off the bench. I think he's basically their third catcher maybe. And, but man, you run into one, it's going to go out. And so that to me is part of the equalizer in college baseball right now is everybody's got kids that can hit home runs. I mean, Jackson West hit a home run to tie it up there late in that game. So everybody that comes to the plate with one of these bats and one of these balls has a chance to go deep. And that just, to me, it just changes the game. Now, whether that's the case at Ameritrade, or I guess it's called
Schwab now, Charles Schwab.
Right. The new name for the stadium in Omaha, whether or not, it has the same effect there, we'll see. But I just think it's been pretty wide open all season.
It's been something to see, Ira, in terms of the fan interaction too. It reminds me of both the basketball and football programs when they emerge. It has some sort of special feeling to it when you come out of slumber and you arrive back in a conversation. Leonard Hamilton's done it a couple of times over for Florida State basketball. Obviously, Mike Norvell has done that recently. But, I mean, let's be honest. When we got to the Diamond Sports in May and June, softball for several years had completely dominated the conversation, not just because of achievement, but there was newness to it. It was something that Florida State fans were falling in love with on a serious level. That hasn't waned. Don't get me wrong. The passion's still there for softball, and they made a heck of a run, and they had to go through Norman, which nobody goes through in that particular sport.
Apparently not.
But baseball was, I'm sorry, kind of dead and buried there for about 4 years, and bam, it's back with a vengeance. This is the type of atmosphere that I remember when I was a student in the mid to late 2000s with Buster Posey's teams. That place is a sight to see these days. I know that they're done for the year there at Hauser, but wow. I mean, you've seen more games than I have there. It's quite different.
It was funny. I was in a line at the grocery store, or it might have been a restaurant. I was in line somewhere this weekend, and I was talking to somebody, another customer, and they brought up the just the atmosphere and the games, and the cashier was like, oh, it was amazing. And this was like I don't know, young lady in her early 20s, which I don't know has been the main demographic for Florida State baseball for much of the last decade. It's just kind of it's skewed older. You have like a lot of the longtime fans, you have the animals, and then you have a lot of longtime fans who have been sticking it out because they just support Florida State baseball. But I think that this year really brought back a lot of the youth, a lot of students. I mean, the students couldn't, some of those games this season where they were like turning students away, students are trying to climb the fence. You've got the marching chiefs in the stadium. It's really been remarkable. And that's why I touched on earlier. Like, I know we kind of, as you're not as old as I am, but like as older people, we, as more mature people, we like sometimes bristle at some of the antics, but it is a fun baseball. If you don't obsess about that and you just think about the passion they play with, how hard they play, how much fun they have when they're playing, whether it's the pitchers, again, Connor Whitaker is a guy that doesn't really show a whole lot of emotion, but man, he gets the final out and throws his glove in the air, and we've got some pictures of him just screaming, and it's just it's a fun team. and I think it's a combination of being really good. It's, if you're fun and you're not very good, well, that's, I guess, the Savannah Bananas or whatever. But if you're going to be a good baseball team and fun, play with a lot of passion and fun, you really kind of ignite it that way. And I think what's interesting about Omaha, man, is a lot of people out there buy their tickets before even if they don't know they're going to have a team there. Like, they're just college baseball fans. And so if you're the team playing the number one team, and I think a lot of people probably don't love that Tennessee team,
Mm-hmm.
Florida State may get some of those just regular college baseball fans behind them. And that's one thing I'm interested to see, because I don't know if Florida State's been in that role a whole lot. Usually Florida State's been on the other side of it. This time, I wonder if Florida State's going to be kind of seen as the more fun team, the more lovable team, and maybe they'll get the crowd behind them out there in that first game.
I think you're absolutely right in game one against Tennessee. Now, I've come a long way, Ira, again, with college baseball. 15 years ago, I remember talking to Jeff about it and saying, man, it's a little different. Well, we're doing a lot of celebrating around here. I got used to it. I remember Stuart Tapley had a bat flip against Florida.
Oh, man.
Oh, my God.
Quincy Neaporte, too.
Oh, Q, yes. And Q, actually, I'm probably thinking of the Quincy one.
Right.
And they do that for singles now. It's like, okay, that's fine. I'm okay with it. Just if you work a walk, let's just go to the base. That's I got to draw a line somewhere.
How about I haven't seen them the men's players do what some of the women's players do, like those Oklahoma players in softball will like slam their bat down when they get a walk, like they just hit a home run. It's nuts, man. But
yeah,
again, I mean, it is what it is. But I do think there is a passion that's fun to watch with this baseball team.
And they call it Clubhouser for a reason. I like that nickname. That's catchy, Clubhouser. Hopefully they do more things to make it feel like a club for like you're talking about, the student demo to get over to the park. I wonder, they're going to have to fix that fence in right field. But it's been so lucky for Florida State. I almost wonder, Ira, you just call it Tornado Alley and you leave it there, and everybody's going to inflate their numbers like they're playing at Yankee Stadium.
It's it gives and it takes, though, because you're right. It did benefited Florida State a lot more than it hurt them these two games. But I do think that pinch hit home run, Aslan pointed it out. I didn't think about it at the time, but it hit off that light pole. But if the fence had been there, it might not have hit the light pole. It might have hit that fence. I'm not 100% sure. It would have been close. But yeah, I mean, you love it when it works out for you, but it certainly could go the other way too.
So we're going to take questions from you here on the Monday Smash in a little bit. We're going to talk about the Warchant Top 40. We're getting to some football. We have to talk football. It's mandatory on the Monday Smash. We look forward to that. And the top 40 list for Florida State football is very interesting. But if you I've already see that Director Ben has a few questions in the chat. We've got one that I want to get to right now, though, because it is on the baseball topic, and it's from Philip. And Philip asks, Ira, no matter what happens during the College World Series, do you think James Tibbs has claimed the honor of having his jersey retired for Florida State? What do you think?
That's a good question, and it's probably better for someone other than me. Yeah, I'm bad at that. Like, that's not my strong suit. Comparing some of those things, because a lot of times I don't know. It's hard to compare eras, and he's in the ballpark, man. I mean, he's in the ballpark. I mean, the problem is, you've had a bunch of National Players of the Year that don't have their numbers up there. So I don't know. I mean, I would not vote against it, but it's just, I mean, there's been so many great players. It's hard to, like, JD and Buster, and who else?
Posey, JD Drew, 11, and there's one. It's DeKalser too, right? I think.
Yeah. So I mean, it's
4 out there.
So it's a tough one.
But he has a couple of weeks to add to the ledger, and if he comes back with something that those guys never did, then maybe that would be the pathway to getting the jersey retired.
Yeah, but no, he's been incredible. And the thing about James Tibbs, and I'm sure we'll write about it some this week and talk about it a lot this week. But James Tibbs and Jaime Ferrer, and the other guys in that class. But those are two of the key guys that were freshmen on the team 2 years ago, and that made the postseason, but didn't get very far. And those guys, I mean, that was the beginning of like the NIL era. Like that was the transfer portal was open. Those guys definitely could have left, and I think Florida State bringing in like Jarrett, I think is probably what kept them here. But even with that, like some kids would have just bailed and just said, you know what, I'm not here to start with a new coaching staff. I know it's not good right now, but I'm not guaranteed it's going to be good with his next coaching staff. They could have gone anywhere they wanted, and they stuck it out. So all those guys, like, we focus a lot on the transfers because they've had a huge hand in turning the program around. But it's not just that Tibbs and Ferrer and some of those, again, Whitaker and some of those guys are great players, but thinking about the fact that they stuck through it when players all over the country are leaving every year, for them to see the turnaround, go through what they went through last year and be here this season, I think, again, I really do think people should appreciate them to a great degree.
Just looking over at some of the stats on baseballreference.com, looks like Tibbs is at 55 home runs in his collegiate career for Florida State. 55 home runs. And if you look at his ops, it's well over 1,000 for his career. So the numbers are staggering. There's a chance that, again, maybe some more damage is to be done this weekend if he's pushing 60 home runs over the next couple weeks.
Bring a ring home, James, and then I'm feeling we have a different conversation.
They might make some room for him sooner rather than later. We're going to talk some football in just a moment here on the Monday Smash, but here is a short word from our sponsor of the Monday Smash, State Farm agent Russ Voorhis.
Contact Russ Voorhis for an auto quote today.
I'm going to give you a verbal recap of the first 5 names in the Warchant Top 40. They were Landon Thomas and Grady Kelly tied for 39th, Daniel Lyons, defensive tackle at 38, Keziah Holmes, running back at 37, and Quindarius Jones at number 36. So that's where we stand so far. Ira and I are going to be looking at numbers 35 to 31. And again, we've got a tie in the rundown if Director Ben wants to wipe that up on the screen now. But in this top 40 list, we've got a tie at 34 between, what is old is new again, Omarion Cooper. Late addition in the transfer portal for Florida State, back from Colorado. We have photo evidence of him in Nole gear because that's from a practice from yesteryear. But Omarion Cooper is tied for 34th with Blake Nicholson, a linebacker who was gaining a lot of praise from Adam Fuller towards the end of spring camp. More than just a coverage player. That's what Adam Fuller was talking about. He was getting a little bit more physical. Keandre Jones, interior offensive lineman, second year in the program after transferring in from Auburn at number 33. Number 32 is wide receiver Jalen Brown, who I am fascinated by. This is somebody I didn't get to see a whole lot of in spring camp the times I was down there, but I hear he makes some waves from time to time. And then number 31 is Mastro. One final year in the Garnet and Gold for the Aussie punter, Alex Mastromano. That is the list, 31 to 34 tied, so 31 to 35 technically. Ira, what is most intriguing to you in that list? Is there a player that maybe you think should be rated higher? Is there a surprise, maybe where a guy is? I'll give you the floor. What do you think about that list and those 5 names?
So, and Blake was on there, right?
Yes.
Blake. I have a feeling Blake Nicholson we may look back and think Blake Nicholson should have been a lot higher. We'll see. I mean, that was linebacker's a tough position because, we just don't know how it's going to shake out. You don't think they're going to play 5 linebackers. You think they're probably going to play 3 to 4. And so we don't really know for sure. Obviously you've got DJ Lundy. They brought in Cam Riley from Auburn, who is a really nice player. He's played a lot of college football. So does he win the starting job? Is it Blake? Is it Omar Graham Jr.? Is it Cryer? So we really, Sean Murphy from Alabama. So there's a lot of guys in that mix. I have a feeling Blake may emerge as if not the number 2, then the number 3. And if he does, I think you'd want him higher. I mean, we know he can run like the wind. He's a tremendous athlete. Some of the things they said in the spring, the way Adam Fuller got so excited after that one scrimmage when he talked about how when he was up in the box and he ran into Randy Shannon on the field, and Randy Shannon said, wait till you watch the film and look at Blake, because Adam Fuller's watching the whole defense and he's calling plays and everything else. Randy Shannon was just watching his guys, and he's like, you're going to like what you saw. And then when Adam Fuller went and watched the film, he's like, oh yeah, you're right. And so this is one where, and then just talking to other people around the program, this is one where I'm not saying it based on what we saw, because honestly, and you can speak to this also, it's because they don't really play full contact running football. It's hard to know exactly with the linebackers, but they sound like they were very, very impressed by him. So he's a guy that Jaylen Brown, I think, is going to be a big weapon, but I would point to Blake. I think there's a chance Blake may be a much bigger impact than we think.
Yeah, you're right. It's very hard to determine anything other than maybe pass pro drills or pursuit drills because you don't go to the ground. You don't tackle to the ground in practice. But you're right. Adam Fuller was really impressed with the scrimmage performance. Randy Shannon was. But then also a run game drill in a sequential practice. And he's like, well, I saw him in the run game the other day, and he's more than a guy who can cover. But just to give folks an idea about how difficult this year's list is to rank, 2 staff members, only 2 have Blake Nicholson on their list. Ira, not me, Jeff, but you guys both have him in your top 20. You have them both in your top 20 because you're projecting that he's going to be heavily in the rotation. And I don't think you're necessarily wrong about that. I put Cam Riley in their sight unseen pretty high because I think that his track record suggests a little bit more than maybe fellow SEC transfer Sean Murphy. Like he could come in and play right away. And I don't know how the numbers are going to shuffle, but you could totally be right about Blake Nicholson. I think Ira, at the very least, they like him on third down if they're going to put a couple linebackers out there because his coverage skills are advanced. But if he does anything more, then it's going to be hard to keep him off the field on first and second down.
And then Duke Cooper's another one, man, that could be way undervalued. And the fact that I'm glad he announced he was transferring before we did the top 40 and not after. But if you go back to early in his career when he played at a pretty high level at corner. Then he got injured, didn't have a good season. Then he goes to Colorado. But, he started everywhere. He started when he was here. He started out there. And they had some good corners, man. They had some highly touted corners at Colorado. And Omarion Cooper was the guy. And then coming in back to Florida State, I felt like at the time, Cooper never really came out and said this, but it felt like we all assumed they made the move for him to safety in that spring, showed some promise, and then he bails. A lot of people felt like, well, maybe he just does not want to make that move. But for him to come back with the corners they have in Fentrell Cypress and Azaria Thomas and all the really good young corners they've got, he's got to be open to playing some safety, at least rotating there. And if he wins a job at safety or is in that mix, he could definitely be much higher.
That's the math I did where I put him on my list. There are 3 staff members that have Omarion Cooper out of 7. We got 7 panelists, but only 3 have Omarion Cooper on the list. That's Ira, Aslan, and myself. And we all have Omarion in the top 30. I don't think you come here not to play, at least being heavily in the rotation. And I don't think you come here, Ira, if you're not okay with it's the same defensive coaching staff, that told you you're going to be moving to safety. You got to be cool with that. And maybe there's some reps at slot corner behind Earl Little. I don't know. They're impressed with what Earl is capable of. I know he was in a non-contact jersey a lot of the spring, but I think he's here to play safety, Ira, and that's, again, part of the math I did with Conrad Hussey, because I think Devontae Brown was brought in to be an insurance policy. So if you're telling me the State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, this is a nice little play, but there are 2 insurance policies that are veterans that are there to help usher along the kids in what I believe to be the safety rotation, along with Shaheem Brown, who's going to be out there a ton.
No, you're right.
They know they know exactly what they're getting in Omarion Cooper, and it works both ways. He has to be humble enough to come back to Florida State, but they got to want him, and they know exactly where they need help. So I don't think he's coming here to ride the pine. Is in short.
Yeah, and I got the sense from talking to a couple of people around the program, not coaches, but just people around the program, that raised their eyes a bit about Omarion coming back, just because, man, he wasn't here all spring. He wasn't here for tour of duty. He wasn't here for the last, he left the program on his own, and now he's coming back. There's some people who are like, do you need to bring him back? But I think the coaching staff, to your point, they felt like he can help this football team. He didn't leave on bad terms. He was never a bad guy. And, I think he's always been somebody that, they knew could play, but maybe they want him in a different position. So, yeah, man, it could end up being a really valuable addition. And I like the Devontae Brown pickup too. We're not talking about him necessarily, but I agree with you. They go hand in hand. If you got guys that have played 30, 40, 50 college football games, that's a big deal.
It also tells me that they want to win more now.
Right.
When we were back in December, you didn't know, is this going to be a year where maybe you just let some of the kids learn from experience, which means fail in some situations in order to grow. A move like this and a move like some of the ones that they've made this offseason in the transfer portal suggests they want to reload on the fly. Jaylen Brown comes in at number 32. He's an interesting player to me. 6 panelists put Jaylen Brown on their list, as low as 37, as high as 26. There's only one that did not have him on their list, and that's me, because it's ignorance. Now, I did not see a whole lot from Jaylen Brown when I was down watching the practices that I saw. It was more trench work, and then the day that I watched a little bit more of the 7-on-7s and the 11-on-11s, there wasn't a whole lot from Jaylen Brown. Saw flashes in the spring showcase of the speed that they have, that with Jalen Lucas followed by Jaylen Brown. They called a couple of jet actions to Jalen. He can fly. What did you see from him? And do you think that he's appropriately placed? That's almost like a sleeper position at 32 for wide receiver.
Yeah, it's almost like this is a totally reference that people might not get, but I'll try to explain it. But I grew up at the horse track, as you know, Tom, and my dad would call it a saver bet. Like you're not totally sold on maybe the favorite, the second favorite, or third favorite, but that's where you put your most money. But you put a saver on this long shot that you think, because he might hit it and it's going to have a big return if he does. And so I think, to me, that's what Jaylen Brown is, because I think he could be a guy that is a year away. It's possible. Or he could be a guy that really comes through with some huge plays this season. And I don't think he's going to be a guy that catches 35, 40 passes, but I think there's a decent chance he's a guy who catches 25 passes for 6 touchdowns and hits some big plays. Because, I mean, there probably was not a practice this spring where he was available where he didn't get behind the secondary. Now, maybe the quarterback didn't hit him. Maybe he, just the timing was off. A lot of times they did connect. But man, he has got elite speed. He's really smooth as a route runner. I like him a lot. I mean, I really think he's going to be a huge player for Florida State at some point. It could be this season, but to your point, we didn't see enough in the spring to say, oh yeah, definitely. There's no doubt. Like Jalen Lucas has the elite speed that we like and the quickness, and he's ready to play. Like he's played 3 years of college football. He's coming in here. He's ready to play, game ready from the first Saturday in Dublin. He'll be ready to play. Jaylen Brown, I think, has got a huge upside. I just don't know how quickly he's going to be like a down-to-down player. But I think I'll be surprised if DJ doesn't hit him for some long balls this season.
Yeah, he's got the right quarterback to use his skill set to the fullest. Some years you see a guy who can blaze and the quarterback is Chad Pennington. Right. You're like, man, those do not match up very neatly. But in this case, it matches up quite well. So we'll see what Jaylen Brown does. To Alex Mastromano, I know we didn't talk about Keandre as much. That's going to be determined, I think, on the offensive line for the 8-man rotation. Right. Keandre certainly capable. He was a rotational guard last year with Dimitri Emmanuel for a lot of the season on the right side. But we'll see what Keandre brings to the table. To Mastromano, Ira, I looked last year. He had 66 punts in total in the 14 games that Florida State played. I'm going to remove the last 2 for obvious reasons, where the offense wasn't anything really. It was mostly about field position. He had 15 punts in those 2 games, just to give you an idea. So a 12-game total last year, 51 times Alex Mastromano booted the ball away. Are you taking more punts? Is he busier or less busy this season than he was last year for only the 12-game slate?
I bet he's probably a little busier. I think this offense is going to be a little more feast or famine. I mean, I think there's going to be some impressive drives, and then I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple of drives here or there that go sideways, and you need to call him Mastromano. So I don't think they're going to be quite as efficient, but I think they're going to be more explosive. So I would say he punts a little bit more. And man, what a great gift he is. I remember after that Orange Bowl, there wasn't a lot of good things to be happy about in that Orange Bowl, but we were allowed to go into the locker room. I assumed he was gone. Like I think he walked on senior day. And he's an older guy. He did not come to Florida State at 17. He's from Australia, had played club, rugby or whatever. He had been, he had kind of lived before he came to Florida State. I did not expect him to come back for a 5th season. And so but they let us interview players in the locker room after that game, which was a lot of fun, as you can imagine, going into that locker room after that game against Georgia. But the best thing that came out of that whole thing was when I talked to Alex Mastromano, and I was like, "Hey man, you know what you're doing next year?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm coming back. I want to go to grad school." And I was like, "Dude, that's the greatest thing I've heard." I mean, and I think having him back and Ryan back as your punter and kicker. I mean, it's just huge. It's for a team that's going to have probably some uncertainties this year, just with so many new faces. Having those two guys is kind of just your steadying force in special teams. I really think is going to be huge.
That's a good teaser because the next quintet that'll be a part of the Warchant Top 40 when we do the next video. If you've read it already at warchant.com, because I repost these articles, then you already know he's there. But there is another specialist in the next group of 5, along with, I always like doing this, a safety, a defensive lineman, another safety, and a linebacker. So a little bit of a depth chart battle coming up in the next discussion on the Warchant Top 40. You can find the articles breaking down all of these, again, in groups of 5 on warchant.com. The website's pacing a little bit ahead of the video channel. We'll get that squared away and rectified this week. Certainly by next week, if we're busy in Omaha still, it'll be fun to see how we shuffle things if there are more post-game press conferences out in Omaha, Nebraska. But always fun to talk about the top 40. And again, we'll be a broken record about it. Such a difficult year to parse this list. So many players, as we showed in this example, maybe 3 panelists have a guy on the list, 4 or 5. Those recap top 40 videos in January are going to be quite fun to break down. Yeah, great mullet too, says Garrett PCL. There's no doubt about that. Yes, Ira, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say to that point, like you mentioned Blake Nicholson only being on a couple guys' lists. I mean, if you again, there's 5 or 6 linebackers. And so nobody really knows exactly which ones are going to win that battle, especially when you talk about a guy like Cam Riley coming in who, I mean, he's played a lot of college football, but he was a starter at Auburn, but he didn't start last year. I think he's had multiple defensive coordinators there. They've had several coaching changes. He's kind of gone through it, and they committed to NC State. Now he ends up going to Florida State, but he wasn't here for the spring. So is he the chalk? Like you have him higher. Is he the chalk because he's played so much college football? Or is Blake Nicholson or Justin Cryer, because they've been in the system for 2 years, or Omar Graham Jr., who was injured last year? It's so that's I want people to understand when they look at the list, because in the stories we list how everybody voted, all the panelists voted each person, and you may be like, well, how could somebody have this guy 21, somebody else have him not in their top 40? If you just decided, I think Cryer's going to beat him out and Riley's going to beat him out, well, you're not going to have Nicholson on your list. It's just because there's so many positions and there's so much depth. So it's a really, but I do like the fact that we've expanded it. 7 is the most people we've ever had do the voting before. And I think that's good because it gives us a chance to kind of even things out.
Well, we also get to pick our horses too. I mean, we've done that with running backs and receivers over the years. It's something we joke about when we're standing on the third base line in the stands of Hauser, like who our guys are and who we're betting on. Mm-hmm. Some of them hit, some of them you just toss that piece of paper to use the horse racing down to the ground, and somebody will sweep it up later. But we'll see with that linebacker battle. Your questions here on the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Forhis are coming up after, once again, a brief word from our sponsor.
Contact Russ Forhis for an auto quote today.
It would be silly not to mention that you can head to warchant.com right now for a ton of recruiting coverage. Florida State having its another weekend of official visitors. I think there were 9 in all. That certainly did interviews yesterday coming out of Florida State for official visits. The elite camp that happened at Florida State this weekend. Tons of content coming out from warchant.com. The local side where Matt and Michael both doing awesome work on the ground, covering that. You'll see a lot of videos on the channel as well to that end. Then also nationally, Florida State making waves. You see some reports from Steve Wiltfong or Chad Simmons on 3 National talking about once those kids get off campus and they start talking to the national analysts, what kind of impact did Florida State have on some of these 2025 and 2026 kids. So for all that information, head over to warchant.com and stay tuned this week because we will have much more recruiting coverage for you. As again, there's a 7-on-7 event on Wednesday. I think Big Man Camp is coming up this week, Ira, as well as another weekend of official visitors rolling into town.
Yeah, the story we just posted before we came out here a couple hours ago is on the number 1 quarterback in the 2026 class. So he's going to be a junior in high school, but number 1 quarterback from North Carolina. Faison Brandon was here for that elite camp. Had a lot of really good things to say about Florida State. Michael has a story that's up on the website. They had a couple other highly touted quarterbacks. Matt has a story on them that's coming up. And it's recruiting's weird now because I think a lot of people are of the mindset, especially if you're a Florida State fan, of, okay, I care, but I don't care because there's so much obviously focus on the portal and current players and worry about guys leaving after they come for a year or two. But recruiting's still a big deal, man. They still put a ton of resources, a ton of time into it, and it's important. I mean, if you want to get to the level, we have this argument, or discussion with fans of other schools about whether or not it's sustainable what Florida State's doing. I think it's sustainable to a degree what Florida State's doing. But you'd love to, given your druthers, you'd rather be at a place where Georgia is, where you're bringing in elite 5-star players out of high school and you're able to keep them because you're a successful program that puts players in the NFL. That's where you'd love to be. Whether Florida State gets there next year or 2 years from, they're not there now. But you got to keep recruiting and try to hit some of these classes to get to that point.
I think what you've seen too, Ira, is when you get to this point in the recruiting calendar, you could go all the way back to spring and then the summer, and you have a weekend or two in a row of official visitors. The pool that Florida State is bringing in, you want to apply a blue chips a ratio to visitors that come in on a given weekend. Every year it's gotten better in terms of the pool that Florida State is considering and the players that are seriously considering Florida State. Interior offensive line in general this year, linebacker for Florida State recruiting this particular cycle. The names that they're involved with, that they're tied to, are high caliber names. Number one, number two at their position in the On3 industry rankings in some instances. So again, if you want a better quality of on signing day in December, it all starts now. So that's where we have the coverage, and that's where the coverage is all over at warchant.com and also right here on Warchant TV. So let's take a look at some questions in the final 15 minutes or so. These are the last questions you can ask Ira before he gets on a plane and goes off to Omaha a little bit later in the week. So make them count. I see Optimus Climb has asked a question about quarterback production. If DJU gives this team EJ Manuel level play, and we'll call that EJ 2012, in this season, what is the ceiling? Does he need to be something close to 13 Jameis for them to win the whole thing? I realize the latter is highly unlikely. Where would you put your wish list production for DJU, Ira?
Maybe somewhere between those two. And look, man, I'm a EJ fan. I felt like he wasn't always put in the best situations. I felt like there were some things they could have done differently offensively to help him out. But having said that, I think I'd like to see DJ hit more big plays than EJ did. I'd like to see DJ be a little bit more efficient or effective in the running game. Again, we've talked about those third and shorts, second and shorts, just kind of moving the chains. I think he seems to have a good feel for the option game. I mean, just from what we saw in the spring, I don't know, even the spring game, it feels like he reads it well. And that's something that they didn't do a lot with EJ. I think EJ really wanted, and Jimbo really wanted, to focus on EJ as a pro-style drop-back passer. Like, EJ was a tremendous athlete. We saw it early in his career when he came in to relieve Christian Ponder. But, like, when he got the job, it felt like they didn't want to do that. I think DJ's at a point where he wants to win football games and wants to be successful, and I think they will do that. So I think he's going to be somewhere between the two, and I think that's where he needs to be. He doesn't need to be Jameis. It wouldn't be the end of the world if he's at EJ. EJ was a good player, first-round draft pick, but I think there's a chance he's between the two.
Personally, I think if he puts up numbers like Jordan Travis did last year, and he can throw more interceptions than Jordan did, historically DJ's been pretty good in the turnover department. But if he puts up numbers like that, I think they can go some serious places, Ira, because they should run the ball better this year, independent of those passing stats. And this team is really going all in on the idea that they can establish the run. If they can, the sky's the limit for what DJ can do off of play action. That's a good question. Actually, that question came in.
That's a great question.
The question came in before we started tonight. So thank you, Optimus. Riley is asking, any insight on Meach's new role with the team? I know he's been out there as an instructor in some of the camps that Florida State is holding. I also know that he's been an ambassador for the Battle's End. I don't know about anything, Ira, maybe you do, about any role with the team specifically, but I know he's had those two those two opportunities after his career is over as a player.
I know he wants to get into coaching. We talked about that when he with the Battle's End, when Ingram brought those guys out to the golf tournament, to the Jeff Cameron golf tournament. We talked about that. He wants to get into coaching. They do have a GA spot that came open because Cooper Williams, got a job somewhere else. I don't know that that's what Meach is getting. It wouldn't be surprising me if he gets a student assistant type role to get his foot in the door. A lot of times what they'll do is if somebody has a potential to be a GA or a coach down the road, maybe you start off as a student assistant. Last year, Nick O'Leary was a student assistant. The one thing, just to clarify for people that, since we're on this topic, so GAs, if you're a graduate assistant, you can actually coach players. Like you can be on the field and coach players. If you're an analyst, a lot of these analysts that we talk about, that Ernie Sims came back as an analyst, he can do a lot of things, but he can't coach on the field. So a lot of times the GA and the student assistants actually do more coaching than the analysts that make six figures a lot of times, because the analysts do other things. They do game planning, they do breakdown film, they do player evaluations, they do some recruiting, but the GAs and the student assistants actually can coach on the field. And so it wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, even if he's not the GA. I don't know if he is, if he's maybe in that next role where he's a student assistant. But he definitely wants to get into coaching, and obviously Alex Atkins is a great guy to be around.
We never get to know the players on a personal level, or very rarely are we friends with them off the part of the job that we do covering the team. But as far as I can tell, Meach is an awesome guy.
Yeah.
Really interesting, really intelligent, has a passion for the game. So anytime he has a success, we should all applaud that success, because he's a really cool guy. So hopefully he gets to stick around Tallahassee. He's off the air, like you were talking about the golf tournament. What a pleasure to talk to him. Like, just straight up cool guy. Really interesting backstory too. Raised in London, so that's pretty wild. Boxing fan as a kid.
Super smart kid, young man. Yeah.
Don wants to know, will Omaha be a home run paradise, or in other words, an offensive advantage? Historically, Don, it's not. Yeah. But Ira, you talked about it earlier today on the JCS. It seems like they've wound the ball just a little bit tighter. So this is a good test for the new college baseball itself this particular coming week.
I have a feeling. I mean, we've been talking about it from a Florida State perspective all season. Like when we're at the games, we'll be like, man, you just kind of, you see some of these home runs, see some of the exit velocities and things like that, the distances. And I saw a tweet, I think it was Aaron Fitt, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I meant to retweet it and I didn't. But he tweeted something like, basically something along the lines of, if your college baseball team hasn't set a bunch of home run records this year, like, you need to ask yourself what's gone wrong, something like that, because across the sport, I mean, it's not crazy. Like it hasn't gone completely back to the days where the gorilla ball, but where the bats were just, trampolines. But it does feel like the ball's traveling a lot more. I think you're getting a lot more distance. And so I don't think it's going to be an offensive home run paradise, but I think it might be more of a true experience than some of those years. I mean, some of those years where, these 2-1 games, that's not even college baseball really either.
Florida State will be testing the evening air on Friday. We've got some official news now about the start time for the game, the first game of Florida State's College World Series experience. 6 o'clock local time, but that's 7 p.m. Eastern. So they do get the nightcap. Ira, that figures. We knew that they would be playing on Friday, and the two games are either 2 p.m. Eastern or 7 p.m. Eastern. That is 1 p.m. Central or 6 p.m. Central. You would think they'd put these two iconic brands, if you will, Ira, in the evening spotlight, and that's exactly what's happening. So the first game you'll be covering in person on Friday will be at night between the Seminoles and the Volunteers.
That's going to be awesome, man. There's so many stories. I mean, there's so many stories here because you got Florida State back on this map. Tennessee, they've obviously been the perennial, probably the most powerful program the last few years, but haven't been able to get it done out there. Link kept them from even getting out there 2 years ago. And so you've got that subplot of what Link Jarrett did at Notre Dame, going into Knoxville and beating the number 1 national seed. Tennessee's back in the number 1 national seed spot. And, can they actually get it done? And it's going to be a really fun, it's going to be the most, I'm really looking forward to this. Like some years when, like you said, some of the years Florida State went out to Omaha where you felt like, man, things went great for them to make it there.
Yeah, just don't go 0-2 and Q. Like that was the goal, right? Yeah.
But this should be a lot of fun. I'm super, and we expect it to be the night game because, man, you can't get a better matchup. Tennessee's the name attraction right now, but Florida State's an awesome story and great tradition too.
Man, that just makes it more real. Very excited. We're going to have full coverage for you all week about the College World Series before Florida State send off after they get there right here on Warchant.com, Warchant TV. Thomas T. Laney asks, can we get some love for all the recent hires? Link, Mike, Penske have all been amazing hires. All have very similar vibes about them. All business. You know, Ira, it does seem that way, much like Mike Norvell when he recruits players. When they do their exit interviews, even as, targets and not commitments, you get a certain sense that they like the way a player is wired. If they're all about business, if they're all about trying, working hard, this program's not for everybody. They have a type, Florida State football does. In the same way, it seems like Michael Alford and the athletic department has a type of coach they want to hire. Now, I know obviously some other players in the hiring of Mike Norvell, but man, these have been some serious home runs for Florida State.
Yeah, and I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again. I'll probably mention it 10 more times. But I got to give Jim Curry, who's former assistant athletic director of Florida State, who's involved in some of these hires, and he now is an athletic director at Texas A&M Commerce. And he made that comment to me, this exact comment to me, probably 2 years ago when they hired Link. And he was part of the, he had worked with Penske before when they were at Maryland, so he knew him. He was instrumental in that hire. And he said that they're all very much cut from the same mold. They're all businesslike, very smart, take a really comprehensive look at their program, kind of coaches that are in it for the right reasons to where the players believe they're players coaches, but also aren't going to get run over by their players. They're all about discipline, accountability. It's really, just great coaches. I mean, like I said this earlier, I think on Jeff's show this afternoon that, Link really checks all the boxes. And I think you'd have to say the same thing, obviously, about Mike Norvell and Brian Penske. I mean, it's Brian Penske. What he's done is incredible to not just keep that team intact, but to have more success. And the players they're bringing in for the future is just incredible. And obviously what Norvell's done. So yeah, man, this is it's really a cool time for Florida State fans.
And the Penske hire was so unique. It's different. Most coaching hires go a certain way, and there's a reason that you're looking. The Penske one was just what a weird scenario that was, and come out the other side the way he did. It's amazing. So good point, Thomas. Optimus Klein back in here again. We've got 4 questions remaining, and he says, who are the linebackers on the field? So this is part of our discussion earlier. For 3rd and 5 or more. This one's tough. I don't mean to parse it, Optimus, but 3rd and 5 is very different than 3rd and 10. I think 3rd and 10, you might only have one linebacker on the field, maybe in that situation. But let's play the game, Ira. 2 linebackers on the field. It's 3rd and 5. Who do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely Nicholson is definitely one of them, and I would lean towards. Man, it could be Cam Riley or Omar Graham would be my lean to. I think in the earlier downs, shorter yardage, I think you're looking more at obviously DJ Lundy and Cryer. But yeah, I think anything where you feel like it's a pass, I think Nicholson might be in the field. And as you just said, that is that when they go to those dime packages where there's only one linebacker, if that one linebacker is Blake Nicholson, that's gonna be a fast ass defense, man. That's going to be a fast-ass defense.
And that also means that he's a top 40 player. And damn it, I didn't put him on the list if that's the case. I'm going to go with 3rd and 5. I think they're going to give Lundy a shot. I think he comes back for a chance to be a 3-down linebacker. I'm not saying it's politics. I'm just saying it's the natural development in his game. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. And the second linebacker, I'll go with Riley for now. But it could – the more you're saying it, I'm like, damn it, Blake's going to get a lot of snaps. I might have goofed on the list, but good question again, Optimus.
I like the one Ben just put up.
Was that from Garrett? Who was that from?
Dan Hurley. Yeah, Dan Hurley's. He's waiting on the FSU job. I'm sure that
he is not cut from the same cloth. He's not. He may be a winner at a very high level, but that's not the same as a Mike Norvell cloth or a Link Jarrett cloth.
He may have just turned down $70 million from the Lakers, but Florida State's exactly what he's looking for.
Would Ira keep the gig if Seth Greenberg was the hire for Florida State? Or would you just say, I'm not covering basketball anymore?
I would congratulate Matt Lasser and Ben Spicer and Aslan Hajavandi with being our main beat writers for FSU men's basketball.
I think, even if I was down there, I think I would be disqualified because I've called him repugnant and a pig on the air too many times. So I probably wouldn't be allowed. And not that I want to be in those pressers. Garrett, the real question is, which before and oh man, this is for the boards more than us, but sure. Which before and after pictures are you looking most forward to with the weight training program? I know the boards love them some workout pics, Ira.
Yeah, I mean, with most of them, that's the thing, dude. Like they're kind of recruiting at a different level. A lot of these guys are coming in like freak shows. I would say one I'm really interested in is Landon Thomas because, I mean, I think he, for what he looked like as a true freshman in spring practice when he still should have been in high school, I'm really excited to see what he looks like after 6 months with Josh Storms and that staff. So that's a big one. But a lot of the guys, like, we talked about in the spring, like Jackson West and some of these guys who they've been in the program and they're already look great. And then these freshmen that are coming in, maybe young DBs, I'd like to see have Charles Lester and those guys if they put on some weight.
Yep.
Those would be good ones.
Lester's a very, very good one. I'll go with that. But you're right. I mean, just seeing Patrick Payton and Josh Farmer, they didn't have that much time between the season being over and camp. Farmer's huge. He's uncomfortably large. I wonder how much more trimmed up he'll be now that he's a full participant. Lucas Simmons is a good one. You could see some serious growth from Lucas Simmons. It's a good suggestion there. Our penultimate question. I'm going to Ray first before Dave will close out with a nice baseball question. But R. Wilmer says, Ira and Tom, who's your projected starting right tackle? That is a toughie and a good question. And I'm going to say, Ira, we could make this in two parts. Starting right tackle in Dublin, starting right tackle at Notre Dame. So you have plenty of season to say a different name if you want to hedge and pick two people.
So I'm going to set this up with the preface that if people remember the old Seminole headlines bit where Corey, Jeff, and I each had a quarterback, and one of them took Jameis. Yeah. One of them took Clint Trickett, and that was me. And my thought at the time was that Jimbo was going to go with the guy who knew his offense and had that experience. So I'm going to lean experience because that's what I usually do. And I'm going to go with Robert Scott. I think Robert Scott, if he's healthy, will be the right tackle. And if he's not, I'm going to say Jeremiah Byers. But I have a feeling you may have other thoughts.
I think it's Byers in game one. I think by the time we get to Notre Dame, go with Andre Otto. I'm going to pick Otto.
Look at you.
I'm going off the board. Lucas Simmons could very well be the answer. Robert Scott, if he's healthy, I think it would be the answer if he's healthy. It's hard. It's hard to project that. I don't want to discount his ability. It's good. But, there's something about Otto. I don't know.
I like Otto. I love Otto. That would be cool, man. I think he's a guy that I bet you he starts here for at least 2 full seasons, maybe 3. I like him a lot. I will not argue with Andre Otto.
Oddly, as the season goes along, they're going to have more options at tackle than they've had in a long, long time. So it's not a fixed. Some years, Ira, the offensive line is like your game one guys are your guys, but I don't know. Not just a tackle, but I think, you could have 4 or 5 options there. And then Dave closing it out tonight at Ira. What is your favorite eatery in Omaha? Any traditions that you follow in your years covering the College World Series? Anything? You got anything?
You may want to find another question. So here's my problem. I like Omaha, but the 2 times I've been, I was consumed with work. Like one year, it's a long story, but I had to cover FSU, but I also had to cover Miami for a freelancing thing I was doing for the Miami Herald in 2008. And so
they were alternating days.
So I was either at a practice or a game or a practice or a game. And so all my friends were going to eat and stuff, and I just never did it. Then the next time I went, I just was too focused on work I was at the Democrat. It was my first time going out there for the Democrat. And I did so much stuff away from the games. It was really cool. Like Mike Martin Sr. and Mike Martin Jr. let me come over to Mike Martin Sr.'s suite in his hotel to watch them break down film for the next opponent. And so I got to do some really cool stories, but they take a lot of time. So, man, I just don't have the great Omaha eating stories like everybody else does. I like a good steak. I'm not always fired up to spend $70 on a steak, but so I'm not, but in the, I I know everybody loves the zoo. The zoo is a big attraction out there. The milkshake place. Well, I don't even know if they have that now. They had it at Rosenblatt. I don't know if they have the big milkshake place outside the stadium at Schwab.
Well,
so I'm the wrong guy. I'm sorry. I apologize. It's a good time, but I don't have the great advice.
Okay. Well, you know what the new tradition is out there. Over under 0.5 Jello shots consumed by Ira, because that's what the fan bases do. Is they all do the Jello shot challenge. 0.5. Well, you have one while you're out there.
I'll say, yeah. I'm not trying to have fun this time. That's what I told myself. The last 2 times I went, I was so consumed with work. This time, man, I'm going to have a good time. Unfortunately, we're not going to have a lot of people out there from our staff, but I'm looking forward to. Maybe I'll bring my own bottle of Don out there, and if they go 2-0, Tom, if they go 2-0, we're hitting the Don Julio.
We should. Well, look, if they're 2-0, you're going to be out there embedded on Monday, so you could join us next week from Omaha, and you could do a 2-0 Julio, a 2-0.
I won't even talk. I'll just squeal and drink my Don Julio.
Hotel security will be called. I think there's a pig in the next room squealing.
No, it's just Ira drinking the Don Julio.
That's right. Yeah. Just put a notice on the door. Yeah. Don't worry. Everything's fine. It's just me drinking some Don Julio. We're 2-0, baby.
Hey, let me ask you one quick question. Yeah, do you think there's any divine intervention with this team? Do you feel any magic vibes? I had a couple of people mention to me that they just feel like that there's something special. Just the way everything worked out in the regional. Didn't have any rain delay in the super regional. Didn't have any rain delays. Everything kind of worked out. Obviously, this is the year that Mike Martin passed. You buy into that at all?
If they had won game 2 in the 11th, I maybe because when it got to the 11th inning, I'm like, don't you dare! I mean, go ahead and do it, but don't you dare! Oh my God, there wouldn't be.
Because remember, didn't they win the season opener 11-0?
They did, and they could have. And when they got to 10-8, I'm thinking, don't you dare hit another solo shot before this inning's over! Don't you do it! I'll tell you what, I've got conditional faith. If they win on Friday night, okay, then I have all kinds of mystical beliefs and so forth. If they win Friday night, yes, things are flying, and maybe more Noles fans will be flying to Omaha at that point too. Safe travels to everybody who makes their trips, just like Ira does. Want to let everybody know, coming up on warchant.com on the message boards in the next week or two, we're excited to have some Battles End athletes for Q&As, some football players that are going to be available for Q&As. So if you're a warchant.com subscriber, you're going to see something on the message boards, specifically on the Tribal Council. I'd say in the next week, we're trying to book times. They're coming back to campus. Their schedules are a little bit more regimented, so now we're starting to get some availabilities. But Florida State football players who are partnered with the Battles End are going to be available on our message boards, which is great. It looks like there's going to be maybe 3 to 6 over the next few weeks. So again, we're trying to book all those things, but we thank our friends at the Battles End. And if you want more Nole content tonight, over on the Battles End channel right now, I believe they've got 5 guests for their live streams that they do. So 5 new football players that are going to be talking a little bit more about themselves, their backstory, and the 2024 Noles. So we do want to let you guys know about that coming up. But it's great, Ira, the partnership with that group. And there's going to be some more access to players for our subscribers over on warchant.com, which is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. It's great for the fans because, like you said, right now I think I saw some of the names that are going to be in their chat. And they've got, if you go to the Battles End channel on YouTube, they've done several of these already. You can go back and watch some of these other interviews. And it's just a little different feel. Like when we do the interviews, a lot of times it's more focused about, that week's game or the new position or how practice is going. These are a little bit more on the human side, I think, and some of their backstories and relationships and stuff like that. And like you said, it's going on right now. So when we're done, if people want to go over to the Battles End's YouTube channel and watch that.
And that we are. There's going to be tons of coverage this week about Florida State baseball as they make their way out to Omaha. And then the first game itself, once again, that'll be 7 p.m. Eastern on Friday. That was announced during the show officially. Florida State and Tennessee will play in the nightcap on day 1 of the College World Series. Ira will be there to document it all. We're going to have a full week of recruiting coverage again from about Wednesday through the weekend. Stay tuned to warchant.com. Check the channel often to make sure you get the most content. For Director Ben behind the scenes, for Ira sitting next to me, safe travels, Ira. Enjoy the trip up there to Omaha. My name is Tom Lang. Thank you for tuning into the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. Check him out if you haven't already. Support those who support Warchant. We'll talk to you next week right here on Warchant TV's Monday Smash.